So if you've been around here long enough, you'll know that I ascribe to a unschooly, self-directed learning, child-led learning, project-based learning kind of philosophy. And I don't know if you're familiar with any of those, but people will differentiate them for a really good reason. And I think the reason is that they're ascribing to something, they're trying to get point perfect in what they are trying to do every day. But you have kids long enough, you have kids that learn differently, you have kids that are not interested in your philosophy, and you learn you're going to have to change up your approach in homeschooling because it's just not working for you sometimes when you're trying so hard to make something work, even if it sounds amazing. But all of those descriptions, self-directed learning, child-led learning, project-based learning, unschooling, all of them. I like them all and I appreciate them all and I've learned from them all. But I can't truly say that I'm any particular one. Now, why am I telling you that? Because my homeschool is not directly influencing your homeschool, unless you've been here for a while, then maybe it is. But my approach isn't something that I would say you should sign up for this, because I know that who you are and what you value for an education is possibly different than me. And also because I know for sure that our kids aren't the same. I had 4 kids, they weren't the same. So we have to be flexible in how we actually enact this thing called an education, or our philosophy has to be flex around specific kids that are actually in our homeschool. And it turns out we don't even get an encyclopedia or a book on them. There's no how-to manual at birth, and there's no how-to manual for homeschool either. For me, the question always comes down to, is this working for you? And I know, because we're humans, it's never working for us 100%. That's not a thing. But there are some things that we can do to explore, perhaps. There are certain approaches to thinking about what an education is, or really dissecting how we truly think about what a homeschool is, that actually really can help us be more at peace and more confident and more comfortable in our homeschools. So I wanted to share with you a little bit from a post that I wrote on my website, Capturing the Charmed Life. It's about how to facilitate child-led learning in your home. So when I share about my kids, I want you to know, I just say it again, they're not your kids. And my kids' interests are not your kids' interests. My kids' interests aren't my other kids' interests either. But this is how I generally approached that facilitating of child-led learning. And one of the reasons I'd never wanted to fully adopt a philosophy in my homeschool, like unschooling, is not because I don't love it, but because it didn't perfectly fit one notion that I had about homeschooling. And it was that, yes, I want my kids to follow their interests. Also, I have some things I want to share with them. And in true unschooling philosophy, I would not tell them what I thought was the important stuff to learn. And turns out there are some times where I think, yeah, actually, I would like to engage something with you. So I've learned that learning obviously doesn't happen just because I told them, though, and that definitely has been a lesson I've learned over the course of time. Also, learning doesn't happen because I put some reading in front of them. Learning doesn't happen because we watched a video together. Learning doesn't happen because anything. It happens, though, if a child is interested. So a useful tool as a homeschool family is actually follow their interests. And I have done that with all 4 of my kids, all 4 different interests. Some days I would revert back to a very schooled mindset, and some days I still do. I still kind of think, no, I don't get it. So you're in university, but you don't know how to spell ... And then I have to check myself and say, you know what? Turns out none of us know everything. In fact, my son was teaching me opening chess moves today, and he congratulated me that was spot on. And I might add that by the end of this first game, or this first game after my first openings lesson, I actually won. But he might hear that I said that, because I won, but he also was coaching me. So, but I just gotta say that. So it turns out I don't know everything. He's 13. He's doing really well in chess. I still am calling them horsies. And it turns out they're not horsies and they're not castles. Are they castles? See, that's the thing. I know a couple of opening chess moves, but I don't know the names of all the pieces. And that's just a reality of how people learn. But some days I have to admit that I think I kind of saw them as like mini hard drives or mini computers where I could actually just upload information. And if we would just do this worksheet or this curriculum or this thing, then they'll learn and they'll get an education. So all I have to do is invest time to research a topic or buy the right curriculum or plan a lesson or teach it better or you fill in the blank, whatever, but they should learn, right? And sometimes, and sometimes not. I obviously tried this homeschool approach a lot more in my early years. A lot more. I mean, I had a 6 and an 8-year-old who were doing 1 or 2 page narrations of an hour-long reading that we do for history, and that was just history because I was following The Details of a Well-Trained Mind by Susan Weisbauer, which is a classical homeschool approach. And the only thing I think we really gained out of that was possibly a little resentment that I had gone so hard. And I certainly understood that it did not mean just because they narrated for a page or two at a super young age, that didn't mean they learned it. Well, in my early homeschool years, I did a lot of learning myself, learning about learning. And learning that kids don't necessarily learn just because you have determined that the thing is really important and we need to teach you the thing. So of course now, since I discovered all the great unschooler people like John Taylor Gatto and John Holt, and I know that Julie Bogart doesn't necessarily say she's unschooler, but a lot of the principles that she practices seem very unschooly to me. And who else? Judy Arnell. Who would you add to this list? Peter Green. There's a lot of really great writers about unschooling or about self-directed educations, and all of them have informed my homeschool and have helped me to relax a bit and take a load off, not have such unrealistic expectations. Because, and I love this quote, a schooled education is a mile wide and an inch deep anyway. A schooled education is a mile wide and an inch deep anyway. When I watch my kids learning, like outside of the scope of a typical homeschool routine or the schooled hours of a day, I discovered that they are indeed learning. They're always learning. That's what we do as humans. Their interests, though, whatever their interests are, can be accommodated in a schooly kind of way. And the only reason that I would say that we could work toward doing that in a schooly kind of way is to put our minds at ease that actually they're learning. And in fact, even in a kind of traditional way, there are times when they're doing things like a reading that is independent of you. And no, it may not be what you would prescribe, but they're still learning. They're reading. You can include whatever their interests are. I know for years, my oldest daughter was really interested in history, especially British history. She loved going deep in that rabbit hole of all the monarchy-related things. And she loved Kate and Will. So on one homeschool conference, we were at a homeschool conference over the weekend. Will and Kate were getting married, and we stayed up all night just to watch that wedding. Well, that interest stuck because she, to this day, is in her 3rd year university, not doing British history. She's doing ancient Greek and Roman history, but loves it, and it continues. My 2nd daughter has had a lot of different interests. She loves all things zoology, all things animals, and, underwater, over water, flying through the air, barking in the backyard. She has loved it all. At some point when she was really little, I thought she'd want to be a veterinarian. And it turns out, nope, that's not what she's doing right now. She also had so many conversations with my husband, who's a physician, and asked all sorts of baby delivering questions, that she got really engaged in that world, thinking that she would probably go down that path. She still hasn't done that. She would ask questions that I, even in nursing school, in my obstetrical program, did not learn probably within the first 6 weeks or 6 months. What happens to a pregnant mom when she gets high blood pressure? I didn't even know that was a thing when I was her age. I think she was 10 when she was asking that. What if different moms' uteruses don't clamp down and the bleeding won't stop? I know I knew that in my 3rd or 4th year of nursing. Did not know that when I was 10. Or does she have to go to surgery immediately? Or what will happen to the baby? All these questions. Now you could say, well, there is no place around the world that has a conventional education teaching a 10-year-old about obstetrics. No, I agree. And I'm not suggesting that we have to either. Or maybe it has some value that I can't place right now. Nonetheless, that interest is learning. Is there a way to use those topics, or literally any topic that your child is interested in your home, in a way that could make you feel like you were approaching their home education in a way that was creating true learning? Or maybe I could say it this way, for you to be at ease in the fact that they are indeed learning, even though it doesn't look like a conventional schooled education. So when we think about a conventional schooled education, especially in the younger years, we're thinking about writing and spelling and reading and science and history or social studies. You can fill in the blanks. There's just some basic core things that we typically experience in a school. So if your child is interested in, I don't know, Minecraft, is there anyone out there that has a child interested in Minecraft? Well, I have come across little journals where your kids can actually, do some daily journal writing, or they can do writing prompts where you can start the beginning of writing a story. There's, if you name a particular thing, if you decide that your child needs to learn how to do essays, probably is not the same child that's also doing Minecraft, maybe. But if they're interested in something like that, they could actually use that topic in any writing format. The more you do this, the more you practice doing the including of their interests in whatever topic or school topic it is, the more comfortable you actually get doing it. And all you have to do is have a friend who actually has a school child and realize that what you're actually doing at home really is not that far off from what they're doing in school. In fact, I would suggest it isn't. The only advantage is that you can do things quicker, and you can also focus on their interests more keenly. They could be creating their own dictionaries with definitions, or animal encyclopedias, or hand-drawn illustrations. On this post that I've written on how to facilitate a child in child-led learning, I include writing concepts, spelling concepts, reading concepts, even math concepts. Everyone learns differently, and when we begin to accept their interests first, the second thing we can do is accept how they learn, because I have learned that my kids don't all learn the same way. Some of them are very independent and would rather just read the book. Thank you very much. Some of them would rather do it en masse with more than one person because to them it's more fun. And I have other ones that would never want to do it in a group because that would be too harried. They're all different. Sometimes they want to listen to something. Sometimes they want to watch something. Sometimes they want to, you fill in the blank. But they're all very different. We can facilitate it when we're in a homeschool. And so we should. And also, it always answers the question, is it working for you? It will be more likely to be working for you if you're doing it the way that they need you to do it. Now, I know I have had that experience as well when I've had more than one child, that it is actually quite a balancing act to try and engage everybody. And what I've learned is that you don't actually have to engage them all at the same time. Sometimes there were weeks where I would go back and forth between, in the beginning, early years, I would sit down with them at a table and everybody would have their stack of books because I was quite traditional in the beginning. And we would all sit around the kitchen table, and I would move from child to child to child to child. That was exhausting. That was exhausting. But I would give you that being a parent of many kids is going to be exhausting at some point, no matter what scenario. But there is a way to make it simpler. You obviously can cluster some of the things that you do, and if you can, that's probably the best approach, is if you're doing something with more than one child, or with one child, ask yourself, can I do this with more than one? That would be the easiest way to do it. Also, you don't have to do everything all the time. In my beginning years, if a child did a math workbook page, I checked it at 3 o'clock every day. And I wrote down what they did every day. Just pause. I actually genuinely, I want to make a joke right now, but I genuinely look back and think, dang, that was so much work, and I put so much effort into that, and my heart was in the right place, but I was extending myself in a way that I really didn't need to do, because I could, on the other hand, look back, say once a week, check to see, are they getting it? Or when they get older, actually just ask them, how are you doing this thing? Or have them explain it to you once a week, and have them show you how to do a math problem or whatever it is. You can actually make it a lot simpler and spend a lot less time jumping from one child to the next. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're in the midst of homeschooling right now, more than one child, then put your comments or your ideas on how you make that work. Of course, there is always the less is more approach as well, that it's fun in the beginning, especially in the very beginning of homeschooling, and you're trying to incorporate all the new things that you've got, you purchased, and you want to make this a beautiful educational experience. And so anytime someone comes up with an idea of what you could be doing, you're on it. Less is more. If you're always feeling pressured to do everything, have an 8 to 3 kind of education, make sure that you're not missing a beat, you're just actually stressing yourself and your kids. That was most definitely my experience. Now, I've discovered too that when you let them be and just do fewer things, they're very engaged in what they're doing. And then they start learning things that you were really not expecting them to dig deep into. I think that's sometimes why, a lot of the times even, why schooled families, not all schooled families, but some schooled families will say homeschool kids are really smart. And I think there's really smart kids in school too. I know them. I am married to one. And there's no question that there's smart kids everywhere. But I think the beauty of homeschooling is that you give a lot of time for kids to dig deep into their interests, and they go down rabbit holes that you just don't have time for in school. And you also, as a homeschool mom, are eager to help encourage whatever that rabbit hole is. So you help them find more resources or people to teach them things. You go deep into whatever their interests are, and they go deep. And so then they end up looking quite brilliant at different things. And just like I said in the beginning, though, they all look very different because they are all very different people. So I want to remind you that who you're educating, or what the purpose of an education is to raise up a specific child. So who is the specific child in your home? I encourage you to get out a journal or a notebook, that you keep track of the interests that they have on a regular basis, maybe once every few months. Maybe you do it as an end of year assessment, or whatever time you're typically wrapping things up. And you can ask yourself, what did my child actually want to learn this year? What did we do that I was also interested in? Or maybe other kids had interests in certain things. You can write all those things down. But what is the child that you're writing about right now? What do they really love to do? And how can I actually incorporate that in those core basic subjects, so that you can be more confident that they are indeed learning? Think outside the box of a traditional homeschool, of the textbook or the lecture or the lesson plans, or even workbook pages, or even reading. There's a thought. think outside the box for what learning could be. It's not difficult to incorporate any subject that our child is interested in if we are so inclined. And we're doing that not because we need to do that, but as an unconventional deschooling method. I actually think that it actually benefits us as homeschool moms to recognize that our children are learning kind of conventional things, just in unconventional ways. Children need, okay, I'm going to quote John Holt, and if you haven't read John Holt, you got to read John Holt, because him and John Taylor Gatto will bring you so much peace and freedom. He said, children do not need to be made to learn about the world or shown how. They want to, and they know how. We just got to trust that they will. So on March 31st, I'm going to have a Deschool Your Homeschool class. And if you're interested, let me know, because there's a little bit of homeschool mama homework before we get started, because we are going to observe our kids and put practical use to the tools that I'm going to share in that class, so that you can actually get a little bit more freer and more at peace with what you're actually doing in your homeschool. So let me know if you're interested. Have a good day.